Hey, it's Justin Goff. I'm here with Copy Accelerator LITE member Matt Murphy. Matt's got a really interesting story. He came to one of our events last September, knowing absolutely nothing about copy, nothing about copywriting, internet marketing, and within about 7 months had his first $10,000 month. That's a pretty impressive feat, if you ask me. Took me a lot longer personally to get anywhere near that number. So I wanted to have Matt on to kind of talk about his journey, how he got there, what he's kind of dealt with along the way, and kind of what he's going through now. So, Matt, you have a pretty interesting background and stories. So, you had never written copy. You were not really that familiar with direct response, but you used to make a living as a pastor. I'm really curious how you transitioned from that to writing.
So there was about, we'll say, 3-year gap between when I stopped like earning a living as a pastor and then started copywriting. In 2017, it's a long story, and that's not what this podcast is about. But basically, my life and my family's life was to where being a pastor wasn't working anymore. I got super depressed. I took a leave of absence and started feeling better almost immediately. And I was like, oh, working at a church is what's making me sick. So it's kind of resulted in a midlife crisis, so to speak. Trying to figure out, okay, so I have a master's degree in church work. Now what do I do? Because that's useless in most business world. But I had been telling stories. I had been being persuasive. I had been stuff like I thought about being a counselor. I thought about starting a restaurant, stuff like that. I like to cook. But ultimately, all of that just was like, that's not going to fit with the life that I want to live. I have 4 kids. So stumbled around, said, I wonder if there's a way I can make money on the internet without leaving my house so I can take care of my kids and all that stuff. I started writing blogs, like about pages, which I guess can kind of be copywriting, but I wasn't thinking of it that way. I was just like helping people tell their stories. And somehow I got into the Justin and Stefan Talk copy group. Brooks posted something about, hey, if you want to volunteer for this event, we'll give you a free ticket. And I was like, oh, I don't have a clue what this is, but it's free. So sure. Somehow they picked me. That's how I got to come to the event. And I didn't understand most of what I was doing, but then between stuff you and Stefan were sharing, and then everybody at that event, like everybody was like, this changed my life, all this stuff. I don't know if I got caught up in it or what, but I said, I'm gonna take a bet on myself. I don't know anything about this. I'll put this on the credit card and figure it out from there. And then whatever, 9 months later, now it's my job, and I couldn't imagine it being anything else.
Which it's so funny too, because Steph and I are very adamant about discouraging people kind of from doing that. But yeah, I mean, okay, so you were at the event as a volunteer. I have to imagine a lot of the content was probably very over your head at the time.
Totally over my head. Before I signed up, I remember Stefan's wife, Laura, was like on the sales team or whatever. And so I was like, I hit her up in the DM and like, look, I'm a dad. You have a kid. Be straight with me, which she's still a salesperson, so whatever. But I took it outside and she says like, I mean, I can't promise you anything, but if you can work hard, and you could go for it. And that's where I was like, I need something to dedicate myself to and learn. So let's do it.
So let's kind of talk about after you joined Copy Accelerator and where the copywriting journey kind of started there. What I have to imagine at the beginning, it was very much like drinking from a fire hose, just trying to learn everything.
For sure. So like at that event, Stefan and you like generated those copy jobs like out of nowhere. I got one of those. So I wrote a long form sales letter as the first piece of copy that I had ever written, which I was like, I hadn't done RMVC, hadn't done anything. I was just like, okay, let's see what happens. I should read it again sometime and be like, see how terrible it was. But that was my start, and I was hooked. Like it's been interesting how many parallels I've been able to figure out from like writing sermons and speaking on a stage and capturing an audience and guiding them along translates to copywriting a lot. It's just the difference from what works on a stage doesn't always work on a page. So I learned that I used my charisma and like my hands and all that stuff to keep people's attention, and I'm having to learn new tricks. But yeah, it's definitely been like everybody would use acronyms all the time. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Or everybody seems to know everybody else. Like, oh, this guy's this guru. And I'm like, I don't know who that is, or stuff like that. So it's like learning to breathe underwater almost. Like everything is completely new and just figure it out.
Right. I mean, that's a good way to describe it. That beginning kind of first couple months can be really, really tough because you are. It's drinking from a fire hose. It's learning to breathe underwater. It's like almost an entirely new way of living.
Mm-hmm.
So you got that I'm curious, you got that first gig. How did that feel like? Were you just like scared to death? I'm going to screw this up. Like what was running through your head when you were doing it?
So before I actually wrote the one that the gig was for, I said I'm going to just write a practice one. So I took a week and wrote a whole one like from scratch about, I just made something up, but I don't know that I was scared because I didn't even know what I was getting into. So like at that point, I was like, oh, I should start reading other sales letters and hand copying or whatever, but I had not done that. So I didn't know what I was really up against to some degree. So found like in this CA members area, there's an outline. I was like, I'll just follow this outline and we'll see what happens. I don't think that the fear set in until after I turned it in and then I didn't get picked. I was like, well, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe this was a huge mistake. Maybe, who knows? So I committed to myself, as long as I can break even while I'm figuring this stuff out, like with Copy Accelerator and other training, it's like free education. So I just went for it.
That's a great way to look at it. So you got that first gig. I actually do not know, when did your next gig kind of come after that?
So I toy around on Upwork a little bit. And so I would get like small gigs here and there for stuff. Like looking back on some of the stuff that I did, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I hope that those people didn't lose money because of the copy that I wrote. So I got a couple gigs on there, but basically I get almost exactly what I needed to pay for Copy Accelerator every month, right up until about January. And then that's when I started getting a little bit of traction. I actually felt like I could apply to gigs and be like, I can actually help these people. And so yeah,
was that just
one or two
you,
gigs a month?
You kind of gaining more confidence in your skills?
Yeah. So like like I said, there's a little bit of persuasive and knowing how to talk to people stuff that I've been doing for 20 years that I just needed to figure out how to do it in written form. And so that stuff has kind of come easy. I think what I've actually learned the most is like about myself. Like pastors don't get paid very much. Like I actually looked it up earlier just in case. Like the last time when my W-2 when I was a pastor, I made $20,000 for the whole year.
Wow.
And that's basically what I've been making my whole life. So some of the stuff was like, how am I going to charge like even like $50 to write an email? Like, that's crazy. So learning like about the different blocks I had, like the different, just like self-confidence and self-sabotage things that I had been doing probably for years, but I had no idea about until it was like, well, you got to figure this stuff out because no one's going to hand it to you. That's been the coolest part of the journey is like, especially in Copy Accelerator, being around people like you and Stefan and almost everybody else who's like totally successful and been there before and has a different mindset about things and also is overcoming their own stuff at the same time. But like, oh, like not everybody makes $20,000 a year and people make way more than that and they don't turn into douchebags and all kinds of stuff. So that's the thing that I've learned is like, oh, it's okay to do all of this stuff and like to become a new person, even though I feel like I'm old all the time, but maybe I am. But
do you feel like so kind of having the group of copywriters around you, do you feel like that really helped you in that regards in terms of kind of what you should charge and being able to charge that?
Yeah, like for sure. Just like there's the aspect of like who you surround yourself with is who you aspire to be kind of thing. And like, so yes, like advice on what I should charge as a beginner versus what I could charge in the future, but also just like the possibilities that opened up that I had no consideration of before. Like we just bought a house last year, so we've been here for about a year, and we want to put a pool in. A year ago, before I started copywriting, I'd be like, we're never going to put a pool. We'll never be able to save up enough money. We have 4 kids that we got to figure out, whatever. And I'm fully committed to buying a pool now because I'll figure out how to pay for it, how to make, like, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm able to, like, after this summer, pay cash for it or something. But just the way that the opportunities open up and the way that my mind has opened up has been huge, being around successful people.
It is such a big benefit. Cause I know I've shared this a lot. I was very similar kind of when I got started. I had really bad beliefs about money and about charging what I was worth. I felt bad, thought I was like ripping people off. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting too, cause I'm very jealous of people like you who are starting now, cause there's so much more of a community and so much better stuff to like bounce ideas off of and get questions. Whereas like when I was starting in the mid 2000s, like there was nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't even Facebook groups. Like it was really, you had to like know people to actually talk to them. Um, but yeah, it is interesting how the success in the beginning is very much, it's a combination of tactical, of actually like writing every day, learning kind of some of the processes like Stefan's RMBC method, stuff like that. And then a lot of it is mental and emotional, because it's super easy to just hold yourself back and to think, I'm terrible at this, I suck, I got to be the worst copywriter out there. Oh, they want somebody for $100 for an email, I can't charge that, I'm not going to apply to that. Yeah, I'm glad you shared that, because I mean, when you're starting out, like everybody's kind of like that. You feel like small and like I don't know what I'm doing. So it's very normal. So just kind of want to go over that for anybody who's listening, that it's very normal to kind of feel like that when you're starting out. Let's jump to, so you got your first kind of couple gigs, you got some on Upwork. When did you land? You started working with an agency. When did that start happening?
So they had posted on the CA LITE jobs board, and I'll say, I think it was like February we started talking, and then basically was writing for their like 10 to 12 clients, writing a ton. Like, yeah. So it made it real easy to write every day because it was just switching back and forth and crazy deadlines and stuff like that. But so yeah, I've written for them for probably 3 or 4 months.
Okay, so any specific niche, or is it just everything across the board? Are there multiple clients?
Just everything from like an HVAC client, retirement stuff, so like locals type service stuff, to they have like a weight loss client, like for men, weight loss, like more of a direct response type coaching program. And then it's like a mental health coaching program, which that was a challenging one because nobody really wants you to run traffic for mental health stuff. And so figuring out ways around that was interesting and difficult.
Do you think it helped you to be able to write for so many different niches?
Oh, for sure. Because I'm still very much in the point where like the type of copy that I write is still fluid and the niche that I write in is still fluid. Like I gravitate towards health stuff because I like doing the research and like studying the science parts. But I mean, I didn't think I wanted to write Facebook ads until I wrote Facebook ads. And then it's kind of like the kind of data you get is fun. And then, I don't know, I'm still very much I'll try anything once. And right. If I hate it, then I won't do it again, but keep doing it if it's worth the money and stuff.
Yeah. So I'm curious, since kind of writing a bunch of this copy, it's June now, so you've been doing this for a couple months. What has been some of the kind of like the biggest things that finally like clicked with you in terms of like your writing that maybe before you didn't understand, but now like you're like, oh, okay, that makes a little more sense?
So coming from a pastor, and I write one sermon a week, and it's this grandiose piece of art that's like fantastic and it's unique and never been said before and all that stuff. And so then you come into writing sales copy and pounding into my head like swipe what works, like that kind of stuff, and stop reinventing the wheel every time. So there was probably for months I was like, well, I've seen that before, so I can't do anything close to that. I've seen somebody use that angle, so I can't do that, which I suppose there's some value in if you can find new angles, but you never know if they're going to work or not. And so just learning to like kind of model after what works has been huge. And some of it was a deadline thing. Like I don't have time to come up with something like completely brand new. And then also like there was at least once where I wrote something that I loved, but it bombed because it was something that I thought was cool or interesting, but just was not interesting, or at least not interesting to the people who were going to make purchases. So
right.
That paying attention to what works and then modeling after that and like staying in that lane instead of trying to create your own lane all the time has been huge.
Yeah, I mean it's something Steph and I obviously always harp on, that just model what works. If they're opening with an emotional story and they're doing tons and tons of sales, you should probably open with an emotional story. If they're transitioning to this type of copy after the story, then you should probably transition to that type of copy. I mean, obviously you want to come up with unique big ideas, unique mechanisms, stuff like that. But the kind of how everything's laid out in the model of the copy, is always worth swiping when you find something that's really working. All right, so that's kind of one big thing you've kind of learned. Do you got another one that's something that's kind of clicked, I would say, recently or in the last couple of months for you?
So people talk about being able to see the matrix or whatever. I'm not sure that I can see the matrix per se, but there's definitely like even just watching like TV with my kids or something, and like a commercial comes on and like, oh, I see what they did there. I catch that, and like stuff that before I was like, oh, that was clever, but didn't like the psychology behind it or like that's kind of stuff. So like kind of seeing behind like what you actually are consuming to like what the advertisers are doing or the marketers are doing. I mean, I'm sure you see it quicker than I do because you've been looking at it for so long, but instead of just seeing like, oh, those are clever words, seeing I can see the steps that they're moving them down by doing this, or oh, they're handling an objection there or something like that. That's been helpful because like you can watch a whole bunch of VSLs, but if you don't know what you're looking for, you might pick up some things, but then once you can start to break down and see what's happening, you accelerate in the way that you learn.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, if you're breaking down, let's say 4 or 5 VSLs that you know work, and you're like, okay, this one opens with this kind of lead, this one opens with this kind of lead. All right, 4 out of the 5 I'm looking at are opening with this kind of lead. All right, that makes sense. I mean, it kind of obviously ties in with those swiping what works. Yeah, it is interesting when things do tend to like slow down a little bit once you start to grasp a little more of the concepts. Because like we said at the beginning, it's drinking out of the fire hose. I always in my head picture it like some guy who gets drafted in the NFL and is like playing quarterback, and just like the speed of the NFL is just so much different than college. Yeah. And they all say at like a certain point, it just finally like slows down and like clicks, and they can kind of see everything. I think similar stuff kind of happens with copywriters where it's too much, it's overwhelm, all that. You're trying to understand all these different concepts and put it all together into this 40-page sales letter, which is a huge feat. But then eventually you kind of understand how it all kind of works together and the big points that really matter that you really have to hit.
Yeah, well, and even like overall, like the whole funnel, a whole marketing concept. Like before, it was like, I need you to write this email. Okay, I'll write the email. But now I can sort of see, well, it makes sense to me to say, well, how are you getting them on your email list? What are you going to send them to? Let me look at that page, and like how those things flow together. Whereas before, I'd get a job and I'd quick go search through the CA members area, like, where's a video that teaches me how to do this? Or something like that. So I could, every single project I had to learn how to do. And now I'm starting to think, okay, cool, I can figure out how this connects to this. And we need to get them to this place so that when they see this, they're ready for it. And that kind of stuff comes together.
Right. Let's jump to, so I think it was, you said April was when you had your first 10K month. Is that right? how did that come about, and kind of what were you hitting, I guess, in the months like leading up to that?
The months leading up to that were mostly, so I had 2 retainers at the time, and it was about 3K a month. Just doing like emails for an Upwork client, and then the agency stuff. Um, then there's a couple of jobs on the CA board that I got, a couple sales letter jobs. I think that, well, they were both the contests. I got invited to 2 of the contests
Okay.
back to back. That helped. And then hooked up with a SaaS product from the live event, just doing networking. Actually, other people networked on my behalf, and then I followed up with them afterwards. It's like a church related product.
Oh, nice.
So they're like, you need to talk to Matt. And so I sent them an email. I was like, they told me to talk to you, and didn't even know what the product was or who he was. And then it ended up being a job. So that all that stuff kind of coming together at the same time, pushed it to 10K.
Okay, so then for the agency, so you're doing all that, you're doing the agency work. Give me kind of an idea how much you were writing.
Oh, like some days it seemed like I was probably writing way more than I could do effectively. So some of it was just like, how do I throw words on the page fast enough so they can get it up? And then we'll iterate from there or whatever, which is probably not the best strategy, but that's what we were doing. So I'd write whole landing page in a day, like for something I'd never even seen before. So, or like write a whole email sequence in a day, write 4 Facebook ads in a day for a product I had to learn about that same day. So it was a lot. It definitely taught me some about like what limits are, like scope creep, like all that kind of stuff, like how to set boundaries. Like at one point they were like, well, we could use a drip sequence for this client, and it'll probably be like 30 emails. Do you think you could have that by next Tuesday? And I was like, you guys don't pay me enough to write 30 emails for anybody. Like, I'm not doing that. Which I would have never said that, whatever, a year ago. I would have been like, okay, fine, I'll stay up all night. I'll take all that burden on myself and figure it out. But yeah, so.
I mean, that's a huge part, especially when you're doing retainer gigs, is setting the boundaries of what's expected, what you're going to do for what they're paying you. Because so many people go into retainer gigs with none of that. And that's exactly what happens. It's like, oh, can you also do this? Can you also do this? And soon you're doing 2 times the amount of work for the same amount of pay. And then the reality is too, like, businesses like working with people that have strong boundaries. It's one of those things that seems counterintuitive, but they like working with people who are like, all right, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm worth, and I know I'm going to help you. So here's what I'm willing to do for what you're going to pay me. And if you want to do more than that, we can kind of negotiate another kind of deal, but this is what the deal is.
There was definitely a part of my learning process where I didn't feel like I knew anything. So I had to do a little fake it till you make it, like sending emails and stuff to even clients that I knew were looking for copywriters. I'd have to posture and like be confident and like, I can help you do this, even though I'm not sure if I can help you do this. Because nobody wants to work with somebody who's desperate for a job or like, I'll do this for free, which
Right.
I never really tried that because I couldn't, but I don't know. I can see how that would be like, oh, you're asking me to do work for you kind of thing by doing it for free. So, yeah.
I'm curious how kind of your family and the people around you, because this is obviously like a huge jump and a huge career change. How has that kind of played out in terms of like what they think? Are they being supportive? How's that going?
Yeah. My daughter actually, I ran a cable in so that I had like a hardwire to my laptop for this. And she's like, what are you doing, Dad? I was like, I'm going to be on a podcast. And she's like, are you a famous copywriter now? I was like, I said, maybe after this, probably not right now. But yeah, they've been super supportive. And like, it's some of it's like a little more nuanced because of where I was a few years ago, like super depressed and absent all the time. Like I might've been in the room, but I was just a mess. And now I'm excited. Like I can be with them, like if I want to get all my work done at noon, I get all my work done, and then I can do whatever. Especially this last year where they did school from home this whole year. So like, yeah, I can make you lunch. Yeah, I can whatever. My parents, I don't think understand fully what I do. I've shown them stuff, and they're like, "People buy this?" I'm like, yeah, lots of people do. My dad's
join the crowd. My mom still doesn't
yeah.
know what I do, so
I think they get it and they're supportive, but I don't think like my dad's he's an engineer, and so you think some of it would work. Like I'm going to show you proof, but he's like, I don't want to read that, or I don't want to listen to that thing for that long. So he's not the market, but
right.
he's supportive of what I do, and he's glad that I found something that I like and makes me happy, makes me money. So
that's awesome. I mean, it's so important because I mean, we get questions like that all the time from people who have people around them that are just not supportive whatsoever. I mean, it's tough. I mean, especially especially if it's like a spouse. I mean, that's doubly as hard.
So my wife will say that she hates marketers, but she works for GM, and it's more of like a procedural thing where she does UX design. So she's trying to make sure that the product is perfect for the customer and it works exactly the way they want. And then the marketers are like, well, can we do this? Because it'll be easier for us to sell. And so like there's some tension there. She's not against me doing marketing at all, but she'll say that she hates marketing. It's kind of funny.
I'm curious, what did your wife say when you signed up for Copy Accelerator? Because that was a big purchase.
So that was it was kind of interesting. So I'm like locked into the office for a couple days, listening to the stuff, and then the offer comes up to join, and it was a feeling that I hadn't felt in a couple of years because I had been depressed and whatever. But my heart started beating fast. I was like, "This is a thing. This is a thing." So at the very least, I was like, "I'm going to be a copywriter. That's what I'm going to do." And we're pretty open about finances and about working together on stuff. So there was no way I was going to sign up without talking to her first. Which that's if you're married, do that. If you sign up for a pretty hefty membership. But I was like, I have to do this. Like I haven't bet on myself for years. Like the last few years working in a church, I felt like a punching bag, and it was like there's very much a scope creep that happens there too. It's like this is what we pay for, but we're going to keep asking you to do more and more and more stuff forever. And so it's like I'm going to do this for me. I really want you to be on board with it. And she was like, how much is it? And I was like, I told her, and she was like, you can't dip into our family budget, but if you can support yourself, then let's go for it. And so had a credit card bill that I knew was due. So that was motivating in and of itself, but she was with me. Like, I don't know that she still fully, I don't think she understood exactly what it was that I was signing up for, but I think the fire that I had in me was something that she liked seeing again. So
yeah,
this feels like therapy a little bit, but
it's part of my job.
So that was part of it. I think is like she was like, I like seeing Matt excited about something again and not just whatever waffling around trying to figure out what to do. So yeah, that was I don't know. I'll probably won't forget that night, whatever. I don't remember which day of the event it was, but
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess the last thing I want to kind of chat about is where you're going from here. So like, what's kind of your plan over the next, let's say 4 or 5 months? Are you working on getting more retainer clients? Like what's that kind of look like for you?
So, I mean, some of it probably just depends on what opportunities come around and what I can get access to. I think what I would really like is to find like an in-house type position where I can just work on the same type of product, same type of niche, and get real good. Like I've tried enough stuff that I feel like if the right thing came along, like if it was in the health niche or whatever, and I could say, yeah, I want to write, I mean, I don't know that I care what type of copy it is that they want me to write, but like, I just want to do this one job and get really good at it. That's where my goal is, because it's great to make 10K, but if you're working on 6 projects to do it, it's hard to feel like I'm actually like getting anywhere. That makes
Right.
sense. Like,
Yeah.
obviously I'm getting somewhere, but long term, I would love to be able to just specialize in something and then be like the go-to guy for whatever.
Yeah,
So
I think the in-house gig would be actually really great for you, because you would I always recommend it to newer people. Obviously there's some downsides that come with it. You probably got to sit in some meetings, stuff like that you wouldn't if you're like a freelancer, but you get access to so much data and get to see what's working day in and day out. You can get really good really, really quickly working in-house somewhere, especially if it's somebody who is pretty serious, doing a lot of volume.
yeah,
So I'm a big fan of it. Yeah, I would highly encourage you if you could get one to do it. It's one of the best ways to learn for someone who's in their first or kind of like second year. And you got I mean, your copy skills have improved a lot. I remember the second letter you wrote, Steph and I both being super impressed by how much better you got. So that was awesome to see.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully I'm still getting better. So
Of course.
like, to me, that seems like the thing that's the biggest needle mover. And I was just with the tour with you and Stefan just Friday. That was like the thing you guys were saying to somebody is like, just get real good. Just get real good, and that's going to differentiate you in the market. Which that's what I wanted to do anyway, because that's kind of, I'm one of my higher skills is a learner, and so I always want to be learning and improving and getting better. So that's what I wanted to do anyways. But if that is also how I advance as a career, then let's go for it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always funny when people talk about getting gigs and what's the best way to get gigs, and everyone wants to jump to tactics for getting gigs, and the easiest way to get gigs is to be a better copywriter. It's not really an answer a lot of people want to hear, but yeah, the better you are, the more in demand you're going to be, and soon you'll be booked out to where you're telling people, all right, my next opening's 7 months from now, which is cool to have. All right, so one last thing we do before we wrap up. So you're a Copy Accelerator LITE member. You've been in the group since last September. Let's say somebody's watching this, they've watched some of my other videos, maybe they've thought about maybe joining Copy Accelerator. What would you tell them?
So what I did is probably not for everybody. I was lucky enough to have my wife have a great job, and so my family wasn't going to go under if I took this big risk and it blew up in my face. But at the same time, I don't know how you could join Copy Accelerator and then be willing to put in the work and be willing to put in the time and have it blow up in your face. Like, sounds awful to say, but I feel like I'm more supported and encouraged and loved in Copy Accelerator than I was at the church I worked at, which sounds terrible, but
that should be our new tagline.
Sure. We'll work out a royalty deal for that. But yeah, like you and Stefan, obviously, but every single person, like, is just so supportive. Like, I remember somebody posted something on the Facebook group about what are your income goals for the next year, and I wrote something about I want to make 50K, and they were like, "What? 50? Let's double or triple that." And I was like, "That's not possible." And they're like, "Well, you're going to do it, and we'll help you get there." And so I don't know if I'm on pace to double it yet, but I could see that still happening, and that was not even a consideration before. So the way that people come around you are like, you have a problem, and hey, I don't know how to write this, and then you know who in the group does know how to do that, and you can send them a DM, and almost within minutes, I mean, depending on the time of day, they'll answer you. So having friends from everywhere around the world, having friends who are working in all kinds of different things, all kinds of different backgrounds, and everybody, it really is like a family, which is strange that a bunch of people who, I don't know, they're all successful in their own right, and they probably have all this other stuff going on, but they still are so open to being supportive. And then obviously all the resources are there to learn how to do any kind of copy and any kind of tactics or funnel metrics or whatever it is that you need is all available there. So if you're going to make the jump to join a mastermind, joining one that's going to carry you while you figure it out, which Copy Accelerator does, it's a no-brainer to me. So
awesome, man. Oh, got the dog bark. There we go.
So there's probably a squirrel or something.
Nice. Awesome, man. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I just want to say that I appreciate you coming on, and it's been pretty amazing to see your progress over the last since September. I mean, so many people kind of take the plunge and get into copywriting, but don't really like fully commit. But you've been one of the ones who's fully committed. You're writing every day. You're trying to get gigs, and it's paying off for you pretty quickly. And I feel like I only see that like continuing to go up for you. So I'm really glad you came on to share your story, because I think a lot of people are going to relate with it. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, what would be the best way? Just kind of hit you up on Facebook or something?
Yeah, hit me up on Facebook.
Okay, cool. So Matt Murphy, from 0 to having a 10K month within about 7 months as a copywriter. Amazing feat. You definitely beat me by a lot with that one. I think you probably.
Well, I had a lot of help, so I had a lot of
help. You probably beat Stefan too, so you can hang that on your mantle. For everybody listening, if you're not on my email list yet, you should get on my email list at justingofflist.com. It's a private email list. You can just apply for it there, and you'll get on within like 24 or 48 hours if you apply there. Just fill out the form. Yeah, let's wrap it up. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you for sharing your story, sharing your wisdom. I think you're going to help a lot of people with this.
Cool. Thanks, Justin.